because he's in touch with a lot of doctors and stuff, and he's talking to them, and they kind of told him like this corona thing is going to be big. When he heard about that, he took his plane. No, he doesn't have a plane. He took a plane to that place, and he was just there in nature, kind of enjoying himself in a way, like able to chill out, if you like, with his year's supply of food, and just in the nature and wilderness actually. So that is the next level. If you've got that kind of level of money, I don't think that is unreasonable.
So to have a think about what the silver lining is, you may be faced with things that you can't figure out the silver lining. If you can't figure out the silver lining, does that mean there is no good to it? There is, because Amrul Muslim kulluhu khair, like the affair of the believer, everything for the believer is good, because it gives you either an opportunity to be patient, or you thank Allah if it's good, right? So I think it's about that true surrender and that true tawakkul in Allah.
Yeah.
For even the things that absolutely don't make sense and you can't possibly figure out the positive, you still put your trust in Allah and you surrender.
This is episode 150 of Mind Heist, and we were discussing nuclear war.
That's right. I've got my weapons ready to defend my family.
Okay. I mean, yeah, what we're saying is that we got a few topics, and one of them was, let me read it again, because it's, it's proper. We could also discuss our hypothetical protective measures we'd take in case of World War III due to Russia and Ukraine.
Come on, Putin. I'm ready.
What was the, how do you describe that emoji?
It's a crazy face emoji.
Crazy face emoji alongside it.
Yeah.
So as I was saying in our first take, Ukraine's actually just across the water from northern Turkey, across the Black Sea, and also, I heard that thing that if he's gonna pull the trigger, Putin that is, they got to pull it soon, because the ground will be frozen now, which is good for tanks and stuff to move quickly without getting stuck, I guess, and mud, and I don't know. Sometimes you watch a random YouTube video and you're like, yeah, they sound like they really know what they're talking about, but you don't really know, I guess. But yeah,
I'm not going to comment on who's right and who's wrong, because I ain't got a clue. But if it was the inevitable World War III, what would I do? Oh God. Oh man.
The crazy thing is I mean, especially on an island, you feel like, damn, like, what if, flights get cancelled, kind of like Corona kind of thing, right? Like, you feel stuck. And it's like, sometimes I do think about this one. It's like, okay, let's say no more flights and no more banking. Like, I don't have access to my banking. Like, what do I have in that case?
There'll just be loads of looting, and like, what do you do? Do you keep your family at home and go loot, or do you
go and
take your
loot?
family
Yeah.
with you looting? And then like, you can't even, like, I'm quite far out, so I'll have to drive to places, but like, people will be hoarding fuel. Remember like when obviously COVID hit and everyone was hoarding everything?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened, but like way more. And it would just be absolute chaos. Absolute chaos.
You mean just because people can't access their bank accounts and the flights are cancelled, that would cause chaos alone, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like COVID caused quite a lot of chaos. I mean, without the bank account problem, but just the thought that you wouldn't have toilet paper, suddenly that was it. Everyone was loading up on everything. And then not too long ago, we had the fuel crisis here, where there was just queues and queues for petrol. And I remember driving on empty for so long, for like a few weeks, just trying to find a place that had petrol. And even when the problem had solved itself, I actually sliced my finger with all of that. even if the problem solved itself in like London, we were still lagging behind down here. I remember like my friends were like, oh, there's no problem anymore. But down here, I still couldn't find any fuel for a long time. So, things like that, you become immediately quite isolated, and you realize how much stuff you rely on,
Well, so the two things, like access to money and access to transportation. Transportation, obviously, if you're on an island, it's a bit of a tough one, yeah? If you're not, I mean, if you've got a car and you're not on an island, like, I guess that's decent, but then you got the fuel issue. And money-wise, that's why I was talking to someone about, personal finance and what they do with their extra money and this and that. And one thing which I kind of like forgot about was gold and silver.
Yeah.
He was saying that he took a course with someone. They were explaining how they manage their finance and stuff. And they said, out of my disposable income, I put like 15%, 20% it straight into gold and silver. And I kind of forgot about that. And I was like, yeah, I'm actually going to get back on that, because that would be, if my, didn't have access to my banking, that would really be my only form of kind of wealth, that I can trade for stuff.
I suppose, although it depends, like, are you buying physical gold, like going to the jewelers or going to...
Yeah.
Okay,
Has to be physical, yeah.
Because I remember I came across some sort of post online, maybe it was on Reddit, and they were talking about the hypothetical scenario, like what's good to buy in a war.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were just saying like non-perishable goods, like literally canned food.
Nappies.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like that's what you should invest in. Like cans of this and cans of that, because...
Well, how do you put £500 into nappies like that? I need this whole storage unit for that.
Exactly. But that's the thing is, like, it does show you how much like we rely on. We are just completely not self-sufficient. Like, even if you were to buy a lot of those things, let's say you bought a lot of things in bulk, well, 9 times out of 10 you don't even have the space for it, so you'd probably buy like a storage container or rent one. But all contracts are out of the window in a war. Like the landlord then suddenly owns everything. For example, like, let's say I'm renting this place at the moment. I've got a landlord, but if I can't pay rent anymore, it's not like, the landlord's got bills as well. So I don't know what he'll do. But at the same time, like, it just shows you I'm reliant on the landlord's generosity, really, to allow me to continue living. I don't know if it's like backup plans or something we should have in the Sunnah to that degree.
I mean, that's a bit far, like, in terms of... like some of these doomsday preppers, or whatever they're called in America especially, they take it quite far. But I feel like there is a reasonable level to go to, depending on how much money you have. Like, if you're average, there honestly isn't too much you can do, maybe, except having some silver, gold, maybe having some skills in terms of fixing a car or whatever. I don't know, stuff like that. But if you're getting a little bit up there in terms of money, then you might have... like, I know Tim Ferriss has this. I mean, he has multiple houses, but he has a house that's specifically, it's like in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And he said that he's got like a year's supply of food there. Yeah. And I think the property has a well, so it's got water supply, and all of this stuff. And so when because he's in touch with a lot of doctors and stuff, and he's talking to them, and they kind of told him like, this corona thing is going to be big. When he heard about that, he took his plane. No, he doesn't have a plane. He took a plane to that place, and he was just there in nature, kind of enjoying himself in a way, like, able to chill out, if you like, with his year's supply of food, and just in the nature and wilderness, actually. So that is the next level. If you've got that kind of level of money, I don't think that is unreasonable.
I do think it's. I think it is worth, actually, even cash. Like, I don't hold any cash whatsoever, like ever.
Same, yeah.
Rarely do I need, take out some cash, and as soon as I do, whatever's left, I try and put it back into the bank straight away. But we spoke in the past on previous episodes about having like £1,000 or something along those lines, £1,000 plus just emergency money. But actually, maybe having that as cash is probably more practical, because in the short term of a crisis like that, people will still be using cash. I think it's only like when it starts getting long term that cash becomes really useless. But in those first, I mean, it could be weeks. The first year or so. Yeah, first weeks, first months, but first years even, cash would be. But if something was to go on for like many, many years, then you're going to start thinking, okay.
Sure. I mean, in the first few weeks or even months, maybe people be like, what, you're trying to swap gold for nappies? Like, what's wrong with you? Right? Yeah. That might be the case. That's true.
That's it. But how much gold can you actually swap? It depends what your gold is, like what physical kind of entity your gold is.
Well, that's why you need to get smaller amounts, and that's why silver comes in handy. Like, the good thing about gold is you can transport large amounts of money in a small weightage or volume, right? So like £1,000, I believe, is about 25 grams of gold. And 25 grams of gold is nothing. You fit that in your pocket, go through the airport, put it in your socks, in your suitcase, like, that's £1,000. So even £10,000 is very easy to just move around. Yeah. Silver is where it's like useful to have smaller amounts of it, so you can easily trade it for smaller things, if you like. or just cash out a smaller amount, if you want to sell it for money kind of thing. So yeah, but it's something that I was in a jewelry shop a couple of weeks ago, because I want to do this. Yeah, I don't, for some reason I don't want cash. Yeah, I think I don't want cash really. I want gold, silver. But I guess the inflation factor is there as well.
I suppose diversifying, as they always say, isn't it? And then buy loads of canned beans, lots of beans.
Yeah.
That shelf looks empty. I could stack some beans at the top shelf. I can see right now. Bean place.
It could be part of my branding, always got some beans on the shelf in case. You never know.
Doomsday prepping, bro. This is it, man. We're giving you the real mind heist advice, because I don't see any other Muslim podcast talking about this stuff. Come on, we need to get ready.
I mean, Alex Jones, like he made a big business on this. I think I read an article, they were estimating his kind of sales and stuff on his website, because he sells a lot of supplements, to protect you against the gay frogs and whatever it is. The stuff in the water, whatever it is.
Dude, that stuff is scary, man. I came sorry to sidetrack, but I came across that, the scientist guy who was behind that kind of findings, and I was like, whoa, this maybe I should be drinking all this water. But then again, on the contrary, I came across a random video on Instagram earlier of some dude who has like 3 fridges and buys boxes and boxes of not even bottled water, that Voss glass water. It's like literally all his 3 fridges are full of it, and he just buys it in bulk. And I was like, well, that's the other end of it. That's the other extreme.
That's terribly wasteful, man.
Well, he did say he doesn't buy bottled water because the plastic, so he gets the glass bottles, and that's what is it, net zero or something, carbon footprint, something along those lines. Maybe he can recycle the glass.
I do wonder where that water comes from. Like, is it really coming from a lovely, beautiful, clean spring in the Alps? Is it really? I'm not sure, really. I don't think so. A lot of the time.
Well, they must have put a giant, big factory machine right on top of it. But it's kind of like, I mean, maybe this is a bad comparison to draw, but if you look at Zemzem, it's not necessarily a well like you can see anymore, as far as I'm aware. I think it's quite industrialized.
Yeah, but it's straight out of the ground still. It's out of the ground into pumps and this and that, but it's out of the ground, right? I'm talking about these lot, Evian, Perrier, whatever. I don't know if it's out of the ground or it's water that's in they take it out the sewage and they clean it and then they put it in bottles.
Well, I mean, I suppose that's homework for next episode.
Yeah. Water's a big one. One thing that Alex Jones sold a lot of was the whole water filtration systems.
Right.
That is something quite useful. And over here in Turkey, especially Istanbul, people, they say you can drink the tap water here, but I don't think it's advised. And so how do people go about it? A lot of people, they buy the plastic bottled water. And I was kind of doing that a long time. And then I finally pulled the trigger on getting glass bottles. So now I get these 20-liter glass bottles. I don't know if that's been in plastic for 90% of the time, and then just in the last stage it goes into glass. I don't know. I just trust them on that one. But a friend of mine, he drinks the tap water, but he puts it through a what's it called, reverse osmosis filter, a 6-step filter thing. So that's good as well. But I was telling him, I don't know if that thing works, that filter. I don't know how good it is. So that's what kind of stopped me doing that. And I thought, if I really want, I'll buy the glass bottled water and I'll put it through the filter as well, if I really want.
Right. I think your friend's doing the middle ground. I think that's quite sensible. If the filters work and there is some benefit in them, I think that's what I would opt for, because I think that's the middle ground of okay, I'm not being wasteful. I'm going to have the tap water, but then I'm going to use this thing to filter it, as opposed to I'm going to continue buying. When I go to London, I know a lot of people I know my in-laws, for example, don't drink tap water. They drink bottled water.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I don't know if they still do.
They do say London water's horrible, right?
I can't really remember, taste-wise. It doesn't really bother me.
Not taste-wise,
just
health-wise.
Yeah, maybe health-wise. There's so many little things, though, that are going to have such big effects on your health. I came across a study yesterday, or no, the day before yesterday, regards to like 20 minutes of vigorous exercise a day. And they were looking at the effects of heart disease, like lowering heart disease. And they found that like for women, 20 minutes of rigorous exercise a day lowers like heart disease by 8%, you know. But then they looked at men, and the same amount of exercise lowered it by 50%, 50. And I was like, wow, that's insane. I don't want to do 20 minutes every day, but maybe I should. You know, it did get me thinking. And then I was reading, like, I think it was on Reddit, and I was reading more comments, and some people were like, you know, it's kind of like that thing about doing a little bit, but a lot, if you know what I mean, like doing a little bit every day.
Consistently.
And then someone was saying, like, it's not about going to the gym for an hour, you know, 3 times a week, or trying to do these heavy things. It's just about doing a tiny bit every single day. And then that way, over a long period of time, you've stacked that on top of each other, like so much, right? So I have thought about it. I haven't actually done it yet, but I have thought about it. I think I should incorporate something like that. 10 minutes. I don't even mind if it's 10 minutes a day, you know, just
do
like
you do gym at all these days?
No, not since I started. Not since just before my father passed away. Only because like I'm getting the results I want without having to go, which is, I suppose. But I know that that's not very, very smart. I know there's more subtle and internal health benefits of, you know, exercising and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is weight loss and one thing is being healthy, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you, I'll be honest, I'm just the typical hot weather guy. When it gets cold and rainy in this winter, I just hibernate and I don't want to be outside at all. Don't want to leave the house. But when it's, you know, when it starts getting warmer, that's when I'll get all motivated. I need to go out, and I need to come, like, well, you know, March, January, February, March. April generally is when I start kicking up, and actually April is when I got the watch and started doing all this stuff. And then come like October is when I drop off. It tends to be the same thing every year.
Yeah. So
that's it, man.
So yeah, in terms of World War III, bro, we spoke about this like briefly before. I would like to have, if I'm gonna buy a house, I would like to have one in the kind of middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
I would like that, because then it's like where I'm renting is city life, and then I can always escape kind of thing whenever I feel like it.
But then you've got the issue of like trying to stock that up. You know, it's a catch-22. It's like, how do you transport goods there and keep that safe? But at the same time, like if you are in the city, then it's more dangerous because you're surrounded by more people. But then people do spread out when they're looking for things. I'm just trying to recollect all these kind of
movies.
Doomsday movies and what happens and what they end up doing. And lots of video games as well have that kind of concept.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking today, actually just today, what happened was there was a zebra crossing and an old lady was crossing and a car came and it did slow down for the lady, but they beeped at her. Yeah, like get on with it. Obviously we can assume better than that, right? But I was like, damn, that's heartless. Yeah. And I was thinking, yeah, like Turks can have that in them to do that. Yeah. And then I was thinking, but then I was thinking, everyone has their angle in which they can kind of be heartless, right? So I was thinking, well, I would maybe put the Turks in this category a little bit, the same category as Germans, Scandinavians, where they can be heartless from the angle of they don't feel too many emotions. They're not, emotional people. Then you've got like you could say more in further west in the UK or US, it's because of the training, the propaganda of individualism. Maybe they could be heartless because of that. But when you come to like Arabs, you could say they could be heartless because they're so emotional that if they get riled up in the right way, they could do anything. So anyone can, if they get to the wrong place, they could be heartless, So well, we don't know. Like you could say, yeah, if you're in a certain country and things go downhill, like people will help each other. But I really, really feel like I don't know at all what would happen.
Well, this is it. Like I had the thought earlier when we started this. I was like, oh, I wonder if I should like go to the masjid and like hold out there. But then I kind of doubted the people in the masjid. I had this like doubt in my mind if they would actually help each other, or my local masjid is quite mixed. It's not necessarily full of people that I would say are, I don't know, that you would overtly look at and be like, oh, look, Quran, Sunnah, right? There's people like that, of course, but then there's like very average layman looking guys that, maybe cultural Muslims, whatever. Well, Allah knows best. I know I'm judging people.
But surely the fact that they're going to the masjid means, if we're going to assume they're going to be better than people who are not going to the masjid.
Yeah, you'd like to think so. I mean, I'd like to think better. And I think,
but I think, bro, if you did that, you're like, okay, who can I rely on? Who can I go to? Where is safe? And you say, I'm going to go masjid for the sake of Allah, because Allah said, innamal mu'minuna ikhwa, and this and this and this.
Yeah.
If you went, and you walk up to masjid and you get a bullet in the head, then it'll be a good death, a good assumption of your brothers, yani.
I think that would, I think that's actually a really good opportunity, because going to the masjid and supporting each other and having that teamwork, and
even just the intention of doing that,
you could band together with a bunch of brothers, go out, hunt for loot, I suppose, for goods. I mean, it's survival of the fittest at this phase. What do you do, right? But I mean, I got the ocean next to me. Maybe we'll just start, fishing and stuff. I could live off fish for the rest of my life.
Yeah, bro.
That's it. Just need to quickly learn these survival skills.
Bro, get a boat, Just don't loot, Just steal one thing, and that's a boat, And go to, what is it, like Guernsey or something? That's not too far away, right?
Yeah. I'll just borrow it, bro. I'll borrow the boat. I'll park it back whenever. There's so many boats here that
tell John, Wallah, I'll bring it back. Wallah, I'm coming back.
No, we've got so on our marina we've got a wall that people can fish off that goes straight into the ocean, which is quite good because it extends out into the ocean quite a bit. People fish straight on there, so I just need to learn those kind of skills. I don't know what you've got in a city, bro. I mean, you're gonna have to chase rats and barbecue them, I guess. Do you know what we're making this a joke, but these are real situations that people go through, and a lot of them go through
wartime,
a lot of people that go through this never thought in a million years they'd have to do this. Like, remember how Syria started? Like, it kind of just flipped upside down so quickly, and so many people were displaced and stuff. And it does make me think, like, we spoke about this with COVID. When COVID started, we said, we're all, the reason why people don't believe in COVID is because they're so used to comfort and they can't believe that anything like this would ever happen to them. And that's exactly the same thing with war. Like, we're so used to, the nuclear status quo. Everybody's got nukes, so there ain't going to be any wars in these Western countries. Well, how long will that last for? There was the Cuban Missile Crisis, about 50 years ago or so, and everybody thought that was going to be it. And obviously before that, there was the world wars and stuff. There's nothing to say that someone can't push the button today. I mean, I remember one of Putin's statements in one of these French sort of discussions and with Macron and stuff, and he said something like, you won't even have time to blink before you initiate Article 30 or something of NATO. Like, that felt like a nuclear threat to me. Like, you won't even blink. Like, we'll push that button. And I was like, right, okay, so we're having fighting talk here. And at the end of the day, like, I don't know what that kind of saying is, but like, if something's been made to be used, then the chances are eventually it will be used. Like, one of them will go off. So, it's interesting, man. And actually, I think we do have to thank Allah and Stahamdu Rabbi, as it were, to the things that we've got, the safety and security that we've got, because it really can just be flipped on its head. And there's nothing to say that we don't deserve that. Like, we don't deserve those tests. Everybody else has those tests. Why don't I do? Like, what's stopping me from getting a test like that? SubhanAllah.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, alhamdulillah. And I guess, if things are a bit crazy, a bit insecure around you, that's not the time you're going to be like, let me start memorizing the Quran. But now you could say, I mean, I could do 20 minutes a day or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I've been thinking, like, looking at the Muslim condition all over the world, and Muslims have two choices really across the world. Those who kind of wash away their religion tend to get on the dunya, because generally a lot of governments, a lot of institutions, they'd rather not have Islam in their, in their legislation or in the way of their dealings, right? So I don't want to pick a country, but let's just imagine the hypothetical Muslim country, 9 times out of 10, their leaders aren't necessarily speaking about Sharia and this and that, right? So if you're like westernizing yourself and stuff, you're going to get on fine in those countries. But it's always the Muslims that are trying to stick to their guns and the Muslims that are trying to follow the Sharia as close as they can, that are generally the ones that are being oppressed, or the ones that, the victims in this situation. I mean, look at India, for example, and what's going on now with a lot of our Muslim sisters who are just getting harassed and bullied about the hijab. Across the world, Muslims are getting persecuted, and I think we often view this from a very comfortable bubble, and we just think, oh well, that's happening over there, and that's not going to happen over here. But before you know it, things can really change for you. And I was thinking of like, what lines would it have to cross in the UK, for example, for me to make drastic changes about life here? To make drastic decisions. I was looking at an article yesterday about France. And although
New York Times,
I forgot his name. There's a brother on YouTube, Reverb brother. Is it Paul Williams? Is it Paul? I know his name's Paul, but I can't remember his surname. He does a lot of videos, Dawah videos. He was reacting to the article, so it might have been a New York Times.
Was it about France?
It was about France, and it was about immigration.
Yeah, I read it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the one. So maybe you can give me a bit more of a lowdown, because I can't remember it if you've read it.
Okay, yeah, I read it. Yeah, it was basically saying that apparently the elections are coming up in France, and as usual, the rhetoric is all around immigration, meaning people coming into France. But they said what is not being spoken about is emigration, people leaving France. And they said, France has a bit of an issue of brain drain, where people, educated people, are choosing to leave France because they feel it's not dynamic, because they feel it's dead, whatever the reason, they're leaving, right? And part of those people that are leaving are Muslims that feel like they might be very educated Muslims, you could say useful Muslims, productive Muslims, but they feel they can't exist in France without just fully kind of compromising their religion. So they're saying a lot of Muslims are leaving. Mostly they're saying that they're going to the UK, US, Canada kind of direction. But yeah, that's basically what the article was about. They gave a few different case studies of people who, they tried to kind of fit the bill. They tried to not be too Muslim while still being Muslim. And they said, we're still rejected,
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah, there was one guy, I think he was like an author or something like that. And he's like 38. He said, I got spat on and called a dirty Arab. And he's like, I'm done. I mean, I'm sorry to be able to quote this, but he's like, I love France. I am French. My wife is French. I love French culture. I love French this. And then I get spat on and called a dirty Arab. He's like, I'm done. He moved to America.
Yeah. Well, I suppose they're moving to other Western countries, aren't they? But what also is interesting is like the depopulation rates due to like fertility rates falling across the West. Like I know that the UK's fertility rate is definitely falling. There's some articles online about it. I was just trying to find one that I came across the other day, but there's one from the Times that says Britain's baby shortage is everybody's problem. There's another one from the Telegraph. The depopulation time bomb facing the West is about to explode. Unfortunately, each article I click on is like subscribers, so I can't really read it out. But yeah, it just shows you like, I bet you if you look at the Muslim birth rates, those are going through the roof. Well, not through the roof, but they're probably increasing, or if not steady.
We did an episode about that, I think, right?
Yeah, I think we might have mentioned
it before.
But
I think the Muslim numbers are not what you might expect, to be honest.
Maybe not.
Yeah, we looked into it, and I think like the fertility rate in like Algeria is just like 2.5 or something.
Although I'm not talking about Muslim countries, I'm talking about Muslims within the West.
Okay.
I'm talking specifically Muslims in the West.
Yeah, I don't know, Wallah. I wouldn't be surprised if it was very similar to the non-Muslims, just because I know anecdotally you see people, Allah Barak, got 4 kids, 5 kids, this and that.
Yeah.
But on average, I feel like it's 2 kids, just similar to the non-Muslims, because the cost of living is something that puts people off, and that's one of the drivers.
Well, there's an article here. I don't know how accurate it is. It's from September 2021. It says, in Europe, on average, the fertility rate for non-Muslims is 1.6 per woman. For Muslims, for Muslims, it is 2.6 per women.
That's
So
significant. Yeah.
that is a significant number. I don't know, obviously, how true that is. That's from denisonforum.org.
I suppose what you could say is, maybe the 1.6, where does that come from? I would guess a big driver of that low number is the women who are not having any kids. Not having any kids. So they're reaching 30, 40, 50 because they don't have a stable relationship. They're not married. They're like, I don't really want to have kids in this situation. I want to be married and stable kind of thing. And then that maybe doesn't happen. And then they just don't have kids. Whereas Muslims, it's like, there aren't many Muslim women who don't have any kids. And if you have kids, you're probably going to have like 2 and not like just 1. You're probably going to have at least 2. So, I understand where that.
There is definitely I mean, I need to look at this article and who wrote it but they've split it up into 3 key areas because I think it's about Islam as a growing religion. So will Islam dominate Europe? They've split it up into population trends, fertility rates, migration, and also conversion, which is quite interesting.
Bro, it's a three-pronged attack, bro.
Oh, absolutely.
We planned it all. From the, all these people who, we didn't come with an education and they just planned it, bro. They're planning 30 years in advance.
This forum is definitely a Christian one. Right at the end, it ends with like, Jesus loved the unloved. He loves the alt-right who are caught up in fear-mongering and harassment. He loves the Muslims who conspire to commit terrorism. He loves peaceful Muslims and those concerned with immigration. And he is working to bring the gospel to Europe. Will you be part of God's great work?
Well, is that sarcasm or?
I'm just reading it in the voice that they would like it to be read. Anyway, so I don't know how accurate that info is going to be, but I mean, there is, demographics do change. I did start reading a book the other day, which unfortunately I haven't made any progress on, which was, where is it? Is it here? Blood and Faith. Blood and Faith. It was about the Muslim expulsion from Spain and kind of what happened after that. And that made me think about demographics and, the high times and the low times. Where are we right now? Allah knows best. We are in the confused times. But then again, like there's always been eras and moments of confusion throughout history. So,
well, you can imagine like our parents, they would say that was crazy, with the Cold War, right? You had Vietnam, you had Korea, you had Iraq, had the first Gulf War. You had my dad was in Saudi during the Gulf War, and he was given gas masks, because they're like, Saddam's coming for us, everyone's got to have a gas mask and this and that. So imagine that, he left actually when they believed, Saddam might invade Saudi or go to war with Saudi or whatever. So the Cuban Missile Crisis, like you said, like that sounds actually crazier than what we're living through now. But I guess whatever time you're in, it just seems a bit crazy perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it on a long scale, it wasn't even that long ago,
Yes.
My son probably looks at me and thinks, wow, 1993 is history. To me, it felt like yesterday, so subhanAllah. But yeah, lots of things, man. Lots of things can happen. I mean, I know my wife went to a Saudi school in Algeria. There was a terrorist attack there when she was there. Glasses, like the building blew up at some place and all the glass shattered and they had to evacuate and all this stuff. And any moment in time where there's some sort of conflict, you feel like, oh my God, that's it. Remember the Arab Spring? Wow, that was like yesterday, and that felt like the whole world was going to change, for the Muslim Ummah. But if anything, it kind of just showed the reality of what our condition is. It showed the dichotomy. It showed how divided we are. How so many Arabs and Muslims in that area want Islam as opposed to those who don't, as opposed to different types of Islam, as opposed to infighting, as opposed to politics, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's crazy, like show of, it's just revealed a lot, I suppose. A lot of it maybe is because of the absence of education, the absence of Islam through that many years, that when, I always say, because of the absence of Islam, that when there was that liberation, whatever you want to call it, people practiced Islam in so many different ways that they ended up clashing because they had no education to start from. That's how I felt about Tunisia. I felt like Tunisia, suddenly, you had no ruler, so everyone was like, oh, what do we go to? Let's go to Islam. But so many different people had a different idea of what Islam was. Mix that in with, maybe some external influences, and then you kind of back where you started, because people tended to be a reflection of what they were anyway. So it's quite interesting to see that.
I met a Tunisian guy the other day. He said, I think he said he grew up in France, and he's like, yeah, so I did this and I did that, and then he said, دخلت الإسلام.
Yeah.
I wonder what you mean by that. It's like, I became Muslim. So does that mean, he came from a kind of family in Tunisia where it's like they just forgot it completely, or was it in France he just got a bit lost? Or I don't know, but
yeah, probably. There is generally, I think with much of the Arab world, there is going to be, Islam means a particular thing which has been cemented not by knowledge but by culture, and actually trying to break away from that and seek knowledge is a very different endeavor, and I think that's where you will get the stuff that's a bit like strange. You'll get like, things that, I mean, I saw what is it, like, it was a music video recently about, it was an Islamic song or whatever you want to call it, but it was literally a full-on music video, and I was like, this is what I mean by cultural Islam. This is like, this person loves Islam in a cultural way, but not necessarily in a I'm going to seek knowledge way and I'm going to find out more about Islam way. It's what we were talking about, like hishma, like something is shameful to do, not haram to do, and that shame aligns with Islam. But if you actually look up the halal and haram, you might find a different story. It's all a melting pot, and it's all, I mean, I've reminded myself of this a lot when my dad died, because we were talking about funerals and things you should do and things you shouldn't. One thing was like a cousin of mine messaged me, and he was like, oh, when you go to the graveyard, can you recite Surah Al-Fatiha on him for me? And in my head, I knew that was just something that they do, and that's their idea of getting closer to Islam. It's a very cultural thing, as opposed to something that is like you could identify clearly with Quran and Sunnah, right? And I know there's a lot of people.
Although, have you checked it?
No, I haven't, but this is what I mean. He's not bringing it up from any sort of like, there's other things, like they will do things like, okay, if there's I don't know if this is true, it has any basis, but I remember like at funerals, if like it was a bachelor who dies, then all the women would start, you know what izaghrto means? Like they will start, I don't know how you'd say that in English.
Ululate.
They will ululate.
I think that's the word, bro.
I don't know. How can we describe that to those who don't know what I'm talking about?
Do you have to do it for us?
No. No, they were like...
Wait, let me see. Is it ululate, yeah? Yeah, perhaps.
They will cheer in a celebratory manner.
Listen, yeah, if you're interested, just search ululate, because I think that's what it is. But maybe, I think there's a lot of versions of it. So search ululate, North Africa or something, and then you'll probably get an example.
No, absolutely, and that was like one thing that kind of threw me off. So like in the middle of a funeral, they would do that. Lots of little things, man. Lots of little things, and obviously like what we spoke about before in previous episodes about like going on Eid and doing all these other stuff and all these rituals and cultural things.
One thing I've been trying to do though is whenever I find something weird, I don't assume that it has no basis, in the religion. I just my first thing is like, I just don't know. Yeah, because I don't know. Like, I don't know enough about the religion to know if something is in the Sunnah, not in the Sunnah, right? So I just like kind of just I just have a distance. Like I won't do it myself, because try to only do like obviously ibadah based on what I know to be actually in the Quran and Sunnah. But if someone else is doing it, I'm just like, you do you, unless I know for sure it's not kind of the right thing. Like, in Turkey, after the Salah, they do the adhkar out loud, and they kind of do it together. I mean, the imam kind of leads them, and they do it together out loud. And like I speak to a lot of people, and they kind of have a negative response to that. But I'm sure they don't know for real if it's right or wrong. It's just to them, from what they know, you could say from their culture, it doesn't exist. And so they're like, yeah, that's not Quran Sunnah. I'm like, do you know the whole Quran and Sunnah to know if that's wrong or right?
Well, I think this is the difference between maybe someone like me and you and others that are living in the West and those that grow up in Muslim countries, is that they'll pick up Islam from those that are around them, quite normally and naturally. And with that, a lot of assumptions can be made, I suppose.
Yes, that's true.
Whilst maybe, at least from my perspective and those like me, because there weren't no any Muslims around us, we then had to go and look for that.
Exactly.
And when we went to look for that, we are more likely to maybe find texts and evidences and that we can follow.
Exactly.
And then the clash is when those two, like for yourself being there, those two worlds come together. Because you could say, you could have a text, evidence, opinions of the ulama, and you would say, "Oh, akhi," from Turkey, Ertuğrul from Turkey. You'd say, "Mr. Ertuğrul, you can't do that. That's not right." And then he'll say, "But like my great grandfather and and everyone does this. What are you talking about, you weirdo?"
Yeah.
And that's the kind of battle you face, right?
Yeah. And that's why the way to rectify any of these practices that are, like wrong, you could say, a bid'ah or whatever, is it's not telling them that specific action is wrong. It's creating a culture of knowledge, a culture of doing stuff based on knowledge. That is where the real change happens. And I think like you said, during the Arab Spring, there was a bit of a room to breathe, and people actually started to seek knowledge because they were able to teach in a bit more of an open way, and people started to get more curious and actually try and learn stuff. Like they never sat down and learned it. It was just always observed around them and they copied it. But then to know that we do wudu because of that hadith, and we do wudu this way and we do that because of that, that's a whole kind of different way of thinking.
Well, I think it was a symptom. Like a lot of these groups that people joined, what you want to call them, Khawarij groups, extremist groups, whatever you want to call them. I think that was a symptom of people's lack of knowledge over all these years. At the moment they were given an inch of freedom, they ran with it really wildly. I know, for example, like Tunisia had one of the highest numbers of people that joined ISIS.
That's weird, isn't it, bro? That's crazy.
But I don't know, I haven't read any studies, but I always chalk that up to like years and years and years of Islamic repression, not being able to study the deen, but you still had the passion for it, right? So you didn't have the access to the knowledge, you didn't have the access to the books, but the moment you had that freedom, suddenly you just went on impulse and joined these groups without any knowledge.
Repression plus being North African plus freedom.
Sprinkle all that emotion on top of it. But I think that's a dangerous thing for all of us. I think we all have to be aware of that. There's countless brothers that will start practicing the deen tomorrow, and we all get that anyway. We all at least I know I was very hot-headed when you start practicing, and suddenly everything's black and white, everything's haram and halal. Everything's my way or the highway, and because I watched one video or read one opinion of a scholar, that is it, clear cut. God, somebody asked me, actually, I was having a discussion with a close brother of mine, and we were discussing this brother that we knew a long time ago. Okay, very, very good brother, very motivated, a good role model in the community. And then he asked me, the brother I'm talking to, was he quite a liberal brother? Like, did he have, was he quite a liberal Muslim, blah, blah, blah. And then I had paused for a second and I said, do you know what? The only way I'd know the answer to that is if I knew what I was on back then, right? Because I said to myself, I used to think he was liberal or more liberal. But then again, if I assessed how I was back then, he was probably all right. Do you know what I mean? So it's interesting. Like, you'll see people in different ways based on who and what you are and how you hold yourself. I know that, not in a negative way, but I know that things were very black and white for me before. There was only a few opinions that I knew of, and that was kind of it. And actually, you'd be very surprised that some of the most common things that you consider are, there is no discussion around this issue, for example. There is discussion. Obviously, you take the strongest opinion, ideally, and then you try and follow that and stick to that. But you will come across people that are learned, that will follow something with evidence, with opinions to back them up. But back in your immature days, you would probably just throw them off Islam or something, right? So you do have to be sensitive. You do have to open your mind a little bit. And obviously, there's nothing wrong in asking in proofs and evidences, but you just have to be balanced, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other topic, this Rayyan boy, bro.
Oh yeah, man.
Allah yarhamu wa yusabbar ahla. What do you want to say about it?
I followed that quite closely. Actually, I had the live stream on like throughout most of my days, um, and I was obviously there was an element of it. It was it's Morocco. It's in Morocco. He's a Moroccan boy. Maybe it touched me that way. But then again, obviously we've got kids as well, and he was he 5 years
Yeah, I
old? I
believe
think
5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah, and my son is 4.5, so I was just you can't help but picture your own child in that situation. I know there was a video floating around of him. I also read that that video wasn't meant to be put out there. I read somewhere that and my mum also told me she was following it very closely that like that was obviously a video monitoring his condition, but someone recorded that and spread it, and they weren't actually meant to do that, which is understandable because I didn't want to see that. I don't think that was fair on anybody to share that. I wouldn't want that shared with my son personally. But anyway,
Wait, this video was of him in the well?
This video
or?
was him in the trapped, and so they were monitoring obviously
Yeah.
his breathing and life signs. But that's just a lesson, things like that. I know you want to share it so everybody knows and can make dua, but at the same time, like there's a level of respect you need to have. And if it takes a video to make dua for a Muslim brother, then I think there's something wrong with us. I think reading something should be enough to have concern. Anyway, that's just a side point. So, yeah, unfortunately, he did pass away after many days. It did make me think of the Muslim condition. It did make me think of, I was looking at comments and stuff. The workers, I do not doubt in it for a second that they did their best, that it took time because it was very precarious. They had to be really careful not to make the matter worse. They didn't want everything to collapse, digging that kind of, digging in that kind of way. They didn't want everything to collapse on top. What else? But there was people obviously commenting, saying, "Oh, why don't they hurry up? And they're doing this wrong, and they need to, some really silly stuff." And that's just the internet, I suppose.
Right, let's just summarize if any doesn't know about it.
Sorry,
So,
yeah.
I think like 5-year-old boy in Morocco, he fell in a well, was it 35 meters down, and he was kind of stuck there, and he was stuck there for days, and they were trying to dig him out without making the well collapse on him and stuff like that. And ultimately, after, was it 4 days, I think, he did pass away.
Yeah, 4 or 5 days,
And it was like a big deal online, and like you said, there was a live stream, and actually everyone was following it for days and days.
And I did, you know what? This is a brilliant opportunity to share one of the thoughts I had, because I was going to tweet this and I thought, no, I didn't want to be part of the bandwagon of tweeting. So I ended up saving it. But my thought was, when it was sort of happening, I said that if this boy is to die, then this is a really powerful sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the way I framed it was that this shows that this life you're not guaranteed to have happy endings. Everybody was watching this and him getting involved in this as if it was just going to be like a movie and things are going to be fine in the end, and everybody was anticipating this, incredible rescue, and everybody would be cheering, and yeah, we all got together and we did the thing, and it was very cinematic the way it was done, with so many different professionals, so many different people teaming together. When there was a man, for example, that was like literally sacrificed all his time to dig by hand and stuff. And I remember when he came out, everybody started cheering, because the euphoria of it all. But I remember thinking, subhanAllah, like this boy's condition, no matter what happens to him, he's going to be, inshallah, in paradise, right? Based on the tradition that we know, which is fine. But it was a sign for us that Allah can take whoever he wants, whenever he wants, at any time he wants, and there is no guarantee that there are happy endings. And that was the biggest lesson I wanted to get from this, is like, just because things are working out in this very cinematic way and we're all together and kumbaya sort of thing, it doesn't matter. We've got to prepare ourselves for that. I was very reassured actually when we did get the news that he passed away, that the climate online, at least that I saw, and the climate of the Muslims was very much one of dhikr. And even I was looking at Moroccan kind of content creators, Moroccan sort of viral videos and stuff, and they were all just trying to remember Allah, and they were all saying, look, this is a moment where Allah, there was women actually that weren't even wearing hijab and stuff that you'd assume wouldn't even make content like that, were saying, alhamdulillah, Rayyan's death reminded us all to remember Allah and remember the life and death and remember unity and how we all united to try and do this one thing. And I was like, okay, this is really good. This is really good in the sense that people are reacting in a positive way. My fear was that we were going to get some atheist interlopers going, well, look, there is no God because this child died, etc., etc., etc. Right? And that was a fear. That was a genuine fear. I was worried that some Muslims would react that way. Ultimately, my gran said to my mum, because my gran's obviously in Morocco, and she said, those parents, they win either way. She said, they said, like, if he was to survive, the whole world would have came to help them and aid them and support them, whether it's financially, whatever, with dunya stuff and prayers and dua. And if he was to die, likewise, the whole world would help them and he would be waiting for them in Jannah. And there's this positive. And it's about, that's my gran given an outlook, a very positive outlook on this sort of quite stressful and dreadful situation. These things happen all the time, though. That's another thing.
And you never know.
And you never know. And
apparently a boy just one day later in Morocco, he died the same way.
Subhanallah. And this, there was another, I don't know if you came across the Fawaz incident in Syria, I believe it was, where that child was kidnapped and they were trying to raise money for him. I think it was like almost $150,000 or something like that. It was a viral video. I don't know if you came across it. Did you come across it?
The story, yes, but not video.
Okay, so there was a video going around, and it wasn't a very nice video. I'm not going to go into it, but you can imagine it was very distressing. Of this boy who's been kidnapped, and they were trying to charge the family to get him released. And everybody was sharing it, raising money, raising awareness, etc. That's fine, that's great, that's amazing. But there's so many kids that this happens to on a daily, all the time. And we need to. I'm not saying that we need to have the same energy for that. It's impossible to track all of those stories down and constantly share them. But we need to be conscious that does happen, protect our children from that, but also make dua for those that, have no one to protect them and are unable to be protected. And I think I want to be more conscious of these things. It made me think, like, I want to do more for the rest of the ummah as opposed to just sitting here and watching it and tweeting about it and whatever. And I want to be able to extend my hand out more and do more positive things. And I think we all have a role to play, and it's easy to get lost in, the texting and talking. And
sometimes I feel like with these stories, like we just mentioned a couple now, right? But there's a ton of them, man. There's, there are too many, unfortunately, too many stories like this. I mean, just, actually coming to mind, there are many stories just about little boys. You know, what about little girls? What about adults? And there's, many. And this is the dunya. But sometimes with these stories, obviously, Yanni, I don't really tend to follow the stories too closely. Usually someone tells me about it. But I just feel like I'm getting emotionally manipulated, right? Whether you say it's a good or a bad way, but I feel like it's fleeting. It's fleeting feeling that, and maybe I feel like I feel a bit silly. That's what I'm trying to say. I feel a bit silly that I was so, engrossed in this one event, not realizing that, it's happening all over the world in all different ways. And I don't want to be that person, that kind of silly person. I want to be someone who, when they hear about these things happening, of course they make dua, and maybe they can help some way, whatever. But I feel like, what if I had an orphanage, or I have an orphanage that I kind of know about. I know how they run it. I know it's good. And so I kind of not dedicated maybe my time. Maybe I'm not running the orphanage, but maybe I'm like, this is the main place I give my sadaqah, right? And I check in with them, and I know my thing. I know what's going on, the latest, this and that. Maybe even I'm in touch with the management of it or whatever. And it's like, as many Rayyans I hear about, I know I'm doing my part in a specific area. Because like you said, I can't help hundreds of Rayyans around the world or follow their stories. And what benefit would it bring me or them even for me to follow all these stories? But if I know I have a solid kind of cause that I'm contributing to day in, day out, with the live streams and the stuff, or without the live streams and the stuff, I feel like that's where I should be, if you know what I mean. I don't want to be that person who's literally, they want to invade whatever Ukraine, and so they start a story about, you know, Abdullah who's in a well, and we're all looking at Abdullah, and then so and so is happening. You know, I don't want to be that victim of that kind of setup.
No, absolutely. And like, if you were to monitor things, then you would be quite acutely aware of how often things happen. Like, since the last kind of attack on Palestine that we saw a few months ago, it's probably longer than a few months now, but it felt like yesterday. I'd obviously started following a lot of Palestinians on the ground. I started following a lot of like pages that just monitor Palestine. And now that I know the rest of the world has kind of possibly moved on, or many Muslims have moved on since the last attack. To me, it's like that stuff hasn't stopped, because I'm still watching it all every single day. I know brother Jibril, who, I don't know if you know Jibril Hanzo. He's been on quite a few things, Freshly Grounded, as well as other things.
Rings a bell.
He's quite keen on to keep that kind of keep the media coming out of there quite alive. So he's always sharing that kind of stuff. And because of that, I commended that, and I was like, you know what, I need to follow this kind of stuff. I need to see what's going on. Actually, every single day there's like somebody getting shot, houses getting raided, people getting kicked out of their houses getting demolished, etc., etc., etc. And then if you didn't know that and something was to break out, you would think, oh, things are fine. Things have been settled all this time, and then suddenly it's just popped off. Yes. No. It's been rumbling, and it's always rumbling. And that's why, like, Israel's like, oh, they hit us first. No, like, if you were to monitor the things that are going on every single day, it's absolutely insane. Yeah. So if any one of these events could trigger it, it just happened to be that, one of them will trigger it, and then they'll say, oh, they hit us first. Like, I saw a video I'm not even going to the videos, because there's all sorts of videos happening all the time, subhanAllah. And I don't know if it's an algorithm thing or if it's just certain things gain traction, but like, there are what would you call it, like euphoric events that are like, just everyone gets their arms up in the air because of it, right? Those kind of events are happening every single day. It just seems to be very random as to which ones people get upset about on a gross and a mass scale. And I don't want people to just step away from the Rayyan incident, or step away from the Fawaz incident, or any others like it, and go, okay, let's just forget about all of that, carry on with the dunya whilst until the next one pops up and the next one gets trending, right? I know there's not much that we can do with a lot of these issues. I know there's not much physically that we can do, but I do think that we need to really have that concept of the Ummah is one body in our mind. I think we need to have that sincere dua always on our lips for those that are oppressed, and the more specific you can be, inshallah, the better. I think the more conscious you can be, the better. I think it also humbles you as well. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about how nothing's stopping us from falling into those similar dreadful situations. There's no guarantee that just because we're living in comfort today that we won't be tomorrow, and we need to use it as an opportunity to thank Allah. I remember reading recently that gratitude to Allah isn't just thanking him for what he's given you, but also thanking him for the things that he's protected you from, and grounding you into what this dunya is all about, and being ready, because you need to be ready to remember that everything you own, including your relationships, including your loved ones, your children, your parents, everything doesn't belong to you. Allah can take it away in an instant. And there's nothing unfair about that. That's the thing. Yeah. It's nothing unfair about that. Allah owns it. Allah can do with it what he pleases. So
literally, inna lillah.
Yeah.
We belong to Allah. Yeah.
And I'm saying that now, and I know if a tragedy was to hit me, I'd have to really be like, okay, remind yourself, but this is what all these things happening in the world are. These are reminders all around us. So use them as a reminder.
Yeah, to prepare. Because those that react, that's the test, isn't it, right? Like Rayyan's parents, I don't know if you saw that video, like Feed put it out, and it was his parents. And they were literally saying, I think the first word that came out of their mouth was alhamdulillah. Like when they were asked on video about it, they were like, alhamdulillah, right? And Feed, they shared this amazing hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in the translation of what he said, when a person's child dies, Allah says to his angels, you have taken the child of my slave. They say yes. He says, you have taken the apple of his eye. They say yes. He says, what did my slave say? What did the parent say, basically? They say, he praised you, and he said, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Allah says, build for my slave a house in paradise and call it the house of praise, Bayt al-Hamd, right? Like, what more, for someone who has yaqeen about what Allah says and what the Prophet ﷺ said, for someone who has certainty in those things, what more, comfort, can you get than that, amazing. And in Surah At-Taghabun as well, Allah says, ما من مصيبة إلا ما أصاب من مصيبة إلا بإذن الله ومن يؤمن بالله يهدي قلبه. There is no calamity that befalls someone except that it is Allah who willed that calamity to happen. And whoever ومن يؤمن بالله, whoever stays believing in Allah, they have sabr, believe in Allah, then Allah will guide his heart or guide their heart, right? So again, the calamity comes. The test is, what will you do? Will you react positively or negatively? Positively being grateful to Allah, right? Negatively being, why me and this and that, woe is to me and all that. And if you pass the test and you react positively, literally you've passed, and therefore, that life is the test, and the pass, the result of passing is Jannah, right? Is in this case, a specific house called the house of praise. So this is like life, isn't it? Like, this is the thing. We're talking about very difficult examples, but sometimes it could be a blessing that, Allah knows that you will actually pass that test, and Allah gives you that test so your child and you can go to Jannah.
Inshallah. See, that's the outlook we need to have. And we are biased, and we're speaking about this outlook from a place of comfort.
Yeah,
and that's always important to acknowledge. Yeah. But not to downplay any of these tests that people are going through, but we know and we hear of tests that are even more extreme and even more horrendous. And sometimes you hear about the tortures that some people go through in Guantanamo Bay, or the tortures that Muslims go through at the hands of non-Muslims, all this sort of stuff. And it's just like, subhanAllah, how did they have the patience for that many years? There was a Guantanamo Bay prisoner. I can't remember if he's still in there or out, and I saw these drawings of some of the torture techniques they were using on him, and I was like, subhanAllah, like, going through all of that and still having your iman and clinging to it is a thing of beauty and a thing of admiration and a lesson for all of us. And there's nothing to stop any of any of the qadr written for me to take me to that place, to not Guantanamo specifically, but like a situation that was that intense, right?
Yeah.
So I need to prepare for it. I need to always be on my toes. We were talking, I like the fact that this episode has actually started with practical, physical preparations, but then we've ended it with actually the spiritual
ammunition. Yeah.
And that's it. The spiritual ammunition is going to be way more important.
Wallahi.
The other day, like, I wouldn't say it's a calamity, but at that particular time, it felt like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I drove all the way to London. I thought
you were going to say you stubbed your toe.
No, it's not even that bad. But at the time, it was super stressful. I drove all the way to London, and I was about to drop my kids off to my wife, and then go and park the car. So I didn't park in a very good way. It's just quickly to drop the kids off. As I went to pick up my kid, my keys fell out of my hand, and they went straight into a storm drain.
Oh,
okay. My car keys, my house keys, and I was blocking two cars that were parked, so they wouldn't even be able to get out. So it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't move my car. I couldn't even roll it because it's an automatic, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, and I remember, subhanAllah, I remember consciously thinking, right, this is a test right now. Like, I was freaking out, like, trying to figure out what to do. But I was like, okay, this is a test right now. This is a test right now. I need to figure out what to do. And with the help of my brother-in-law, and I called up some people to come and take the car, but they didn't really come. I came up with the idea to get a magnet on a stick, and subhanAllah, he went to a shop and found a magnet on a stick, and we stuck it in that storm drain and managed to pull the keys out.
Wow.
Which is amazing. But there's a lesson there. Like,
you're all set for the apocalypse, bro.
Yeah, I just thought, like, part of it was like, okay, I need to react in a good way because this is the test. So the moment I had a plan in my head, which was, I'm going to get someone to come and move the car. Like, there's recovery people.
Yeah.
I don't mind if I have to pay whatever. I'll get them to move it, and then I'll go to Brighton and try and get into my apartment and get the spare keys. And I had a plan. But the initial kind of like, what am I going to do? That's when people can go crazy. I could have easily like just flipped out on my kids, you know, like, shut up, leave me alone, I need to focus, blah, 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 you know, whatever. But those moments of chaos, they're quite intense. And if you can slow things down and just be like, okay, let me think of a plan. Once you've got a plan, it's very easy to be patient after that. Yeah, I know that's not the worst test in the world, but it was an imminent sort of thing, right? And we were faced with that on a daily. I don't disagree that I don't, I don't play that down that was a test at the time, and they're all going to be faced with stuff. So, yeah, having that mental preparation, having that tawakkul, get ready for World War III in a spiritual way is where I want to be.
I mean, I saw a video on YouTube. I didn't watch it, but I saw the title and stuff. It was, Ryan Holiday's pumping out a lot of videos these days. And it was something about like the Stoics being indifferent.
Right.
Being indifferent to, difficulties or calamity or whatever, right? And it made me think of like the attitude that we should have, I believe from what I know, like we should aspire to kind of being indifferent. I don't know if there's a right word, but like, not even being indifferent, right? Because indifferent means you don't care, right? Like something good happens, you're like, whatever. Something bad happens, you're like, whatever. But actually, in Islam, we should aspire for rida, like actual contentment with whatever happens. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like, this terrible thing happens. You say, Alhamdulillah. Like the parents of Rayyan, they said, Alhamdulillah. They praised Allah and they showed gratitude to Allah. And something terrible happened, you can imagine like an atheist would be like, what? Like,
yeah.
But I guess because Allah's given us the keys to understand the good behind everything that allows us to say that. And even without seeing the good, it's like, well, Allah decreed it and therefore it's good. That assumption that is good because Allah decreed it, and Allah decrees everything anyway, right?
Yeah, and I think we fall into this, I don't want to call it a trap, but this tendency to say, okay, let's look for the silver lining. And I know I've said it a lot, like, there's a silver lining behind everything. So to have a think about what the silver lining is, you may be faced with things that you can't figure out the silver lining. If you can't figure out the silver lining, does that mean there is no good to it? There is, because Amrul Muslim kulluhu khair, like the affair of the believer, everything for the believer is good, because it gives you either an opportunity to be patient or you thank Allah if it's good, right? So I think it's about that true surrender and that true tawakkul in Allah.
Yeah.
For even the things that absolutely don't make sense and you can't possibly figure out the positive, you still put your trust in Allah and you surrender your aql in that sense, right?
I remember it was like Tim Ferriss or someone said on his podcast, I do quote him a lot, don't I? I know a lot about him. Wow.
You're a big fan. You should get him on the podcast.
I mean, I actually am. What I was going to say is, he's got this episode, I think, where he talks about good questions to ask yourself. Questions, right. Because questions can frame, the way you ask a question will frame your answer, like where your mind goes looking for the answer. So one thing he said was when something bad happens, he asks himself, how is this, or how could this be the best thing that ever happened to me? Yeah, and that will make your mind go in a lot of interesting places. Wallah.
Yeah.
And obviously he doesn't even have the imagination that a Muslim can have, knowing that Ar-Rahim is in charge of his path in life. And going back to like a rida, right? Contentment with whatever Allah decrees, good, bad, seemingly good, seemingly bad. The Prophet ﷺ, I believe it was when his son died, and he was crying, and I think a Sahabi asked him, like, it was something like, how could your son die, or how could you cry? It was one of the two.
Yep.
And then there's that famous hadith where he said, like, something like the tears fall, but we only say what pleases Allah, right? And it's that element of we will be upset, but at the same time we will be accepting and even content with Allah's decree, and we will stay in control of our emotions to the point where we won't say anything that displeases Allah. We won't say why Allah. We won't say worse than that. I don't even want to say really. So that's part of the kind of framework or the toolkit for these things as well.
I think that's a good opportunity to end the episode, bro.
With your yawn.
Did I actually yawn?
Yeah.
I didn't know if I yawned out loud or not. I felt like it was in my mind.
How's it? You sent me a graph. You're still on heavy on the keto, yeah? Mashallah.
Oh yeah. What did I eat today? So about 1 o'clock, I did a quick little prawn and vegetable stir fry with no rice or noodles or anything. And what time is it now? It's 6:45, and I'm not hungry. I'm a bit thirsty.
So you're still on like one meal a day, yeah? That kind of
thing.
The
past couple of days, I did struggle a bit, and I think it's because I might have like gone out of ketosis very briefly, because where did I go? I was doing embassy stuff. Obviously, my dad passed away, and I'm trying to do all this embassy stuff. And it got to about 1 o'clock, and I went into a restaurant and I asked for a chicken salad because it was halal. Don't worry, it's a halal chicken salad. But like they put like these
croutons.
It wasn't cubed croutons. It was like almost like Doritos, and it was such a pain. It was such a pain to fish them out.
Is that not called fattoush?
It's a Lebanese thing, yeah. And there was pomegranates on it as well. And I felt like that day I might have just gone over. Allah knows best. But that like hint of sugar and the pomegranate, and then my wife made a salad the same night that had pomegranates in it, and I was like, I've doubled up on pomegranates here. I feel like I've gone out of the loop. And then the next 2 days, I really did struggle. I was a bit like, oh, I really want to have something sweet, but I think I'm okay now. I've gone back down. So, and actually, tell you the truth, subhanAllah, one night my wife really wanted desserts from this particular place, so I was like, do you know what? It's been 3 or 4 weeks. I'll have one dessert with you. It's not the end of the world. And I ordered this particular dessert from Uber Eats. We waited 20 minutes and 30 minutes and 40 minutes, 50 minutes and 60 minutes. And it was like over an hour. And after an hour or so, they cancelled it. They were like, oh, sorry, we can't deliver it to you. Like there were so many issues. And I was like, I'm going to take that as a sign to continue. So I'm carrying on.
And then you asked yourself, how could this be the best thing that ever happened to me?
Absolutely. Mind Heist 150. Thank you very much for listening. You can follow us, support us, do whatever you want with our podcast at mindheistpodcast.com. You can contact us at mindheistpodcast@gmail.com, which I think is on the same website. I think that's it. I can't think of anything else that we say in the end of it.
Cool. Okay, salam. Oh, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, shadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. That's for all the dumb stuff we say. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.